You're now tuned into multidimensional Memo Radio, the place to take a walk on the wild side. Together we will destroy many enemies, Queen Mob whispered. Welcome back, sleeper. Do you remember where you left off in the story? Do you remember we're talking about Queen Mob? Well, let's get back to talking about her. Today's tale, Something Fishy, comes from the 120's archives, and it's a tale written by EvilAngel413 and Zygard. Let's go ahead and get to it.
It was the evening hours in the city of Arlen when the golden sun decided to go to rest, and the silvery moon was getting ready to wander lazily through the dark sky. Dressed in richly ornamented golden robes, Queen Mab paced the deserted corridors of the palace, echoing her very quick steps. Only a few minutes ago, she had finished giving a speech to the citizens of her glorious empire. Orange sunlight illuminated her stern face through soaring, ornamented, and gigantic windows in the corridor. With each step she passed more guards in heavy armor, who bowed when they saw their ruler. Even though all these filthy animals calling themselves intelligent were far from her, the queen preferred to be on guard. There were her guards practically everywhere in the palace, except for one room to which the ruler was heading, to experience a moment of peace in a blissful bath. She crossed the thresholds of the unusually ornate bathroom, then closed the door behind her, not allowing anyone to peek at it. She began to quickly take off her robes, until to her surprise she noticed that the bath was ready for her. But what made her more surprised, there was a carp inside. Despite her unflinching curiosity, she felt irritation growing in her chest. Who could be brave and yet unimaginative enough to mock her in such a way? With due grace, she perched on the edge of the tub, sweeping the marble floor with golden cloths, and looked at the animal, which, though carelessly, swam in an extraordinarily spacious tub. You are certainly not willing to answer me, who did this? The queen leaned back slightly, eyeing the aquatic animal with her head slightly tilted. The fish swung its tail 3 times, slowly swimming closer to the woman watching her, and tilted its head slightly, looming it slightly out of the water, although this should not be possible due to the anatomy of the fish. Even so, the thing that followed was so strange that it was forgotten. I would have answered with pleasure, were it not for the fact that I myself am not sure how I got here. A low bass voice echoed through the room, bouncing off walls covered with jewels, precious metals, and carvings. Even with her knowledge and the eloquent manner in which she was able to talk, she was unable to say a word of her own. They stared at each other for a moment, not quite sure what to do in this situation. Part of Mab wanted to call the guards, find and punish the culprit, and turn the carp into an unusual dinner, but most of her was tired and curious about this unexpected guest. Carp, on the other hand, felt confused. He did not know where he came from, what exactly happened and why he is now in front of the most distinguished queen. On top of that, being in her bathroom. Despite being a fish, the carp was observant. He could see the tiredness on Mab's face caused by today. So he spoke. It seems to me that I am not a very large specimen. There will also be a place for the honorable lady, said the carp encouragingly and gracefully. His voice was surprisingly soothing to the dignified woman, and his tone was music to her ears. Not belonging to an outstanding species, and as gallant as a catfish, it inspired her trust and a certain kind of sympathy for this aquatic animal. The queen moved a little closer, a delicate smile appeared on her prominent, velvety lips. Shall I not disturb the honorable gentleman? You know. The golden fabric gently slid off her shoulder, revealing silky smooth skin. I would not like to surround anyone with my presence. Carp, despite the surprise and embarrassment visible on the fish's face, decided not to jeopardize his reputation as a gentleman. He humbly bowed his head and raised his mouth again. I would never dare to think of such a beautiful and dignified woman who, despite my appearance as an intruder, decided to treat me with respect. He bowed again, this time staying under the water. It would be the greatest honor for me if your majesty would not mind. Despite the slight problems and a modulated voice, Queen Mab heard him perfectly. She didn't need to know any more. She stripped off her robes, dropped them entirely to the floor, and carefully touched the water in the tub with her toes. It was pleasantly and soothingly warm, not too hot, not too cool. She submerged her leg fully, then another joined her, and the woman began to descend completely. The carp swam past her, glancing at Faye every now and then. The queen had just noticed the lit candles on the rim of the tub, the light reflected from the richly decorated walls. For a moment she felt the slippery skin of a carp touching her legs, and despite the irresistible desire to kill him for such defamation, the warmth of the water and the general atmosphere calmed her down, so much so that the great queen smiled at the fish. Maybe you can tell me your name? Asked Mab, reaching for a washing sponge made by Faye's finest craftsman. The fish, my dear lady, the carp replied, emerging with its mouth above the surface of the water, centrally in front of the queen. In fact, he didn't remember his name, it was the first thing that came to his mind. Where are you from then, Mr. Law, Fish? The fish replied calmly. Of course, please forgive me. A light blush rose on the cheeks of a woman who decided to hide her face behind a cascade of shiny, amber waves of hair. With every soothing movement on her skin and the coming, gentle whirlpools caused by this fish guy, she felt a blissful calm and relaxation in which she wanted to plunge herself up to her nose. But I still haven't heard the answer to my question. Gently, she leaned back, resting her head in a specially carved hollow. The carp immediately swam a little closer, taking care not to expose himself to the fiery woman's wrath and not to touch her accidentally. It is a land that is very remote and as cruel as it is beautiful. It is not a world where the weak will survive, and the strongest have to prove their strength every day. If he could, the carp would shed a tear, but even with all the absurdity of the situation, such an extreme was not possible, because it was a fish of the species Cyprinus carpio. Queen Mab, however, was not completely indifferent to the confession of her fettered companion. The news touched her icy heart, allowing her to experience something she had never felt before, compassion. My dearest guest, would you then not mind staying by my side for a long time? Mab asked a question. She was surprised by the carp's words. In the end almost all lands were conquered by her. However, she temporarily decided to trust her unexpected guest. She was, after all, a being of great power and might, with her magic could not be compared to when thousands of armies fell by the light gesture of her hand. The fish was not a threat to her, and perhaps there was a chance of becoming a useful companion. Mab took the sponge one more time and began to wash her body with gentle movements. It would be a great honor for me, the fish responded to the queen's proposal. He swam past her, occasionally glancing at her perfect body and firm, abundant breasts, but it did not escape the queen's attention. She, however, noticing the clear and hungry gaze of her freshwater companion, smiled slightly, and a dangerous gleam appeared in her eye. "I see you are missing something, my dearest comrade," she accentuated it by squeezing the water from the sponge into her refined curves. If only he could, the carp would swallow nervously, however, constrained by its fleshy prison, only turned, lowering its gaze in confusion. "I humbly ask forgiveness, my lady. Despite being a traveler and seeing so many wonders of the world, you are the greatest of them," he replied, still not daring to look at the queen. A surprise appeared on the woman's face first, then replaced by a gentle expression of adoration and contentment. The prominent apricot-colored lips formed a delicate horseshoe. The dark eyes, although cold and threatening, became tender and gifted with a tender look to the fish currently swimming in her tub. The fish paused for a moment, showing his mouth above the surface of the water. His eyes met the great queen. Despite the fact that they only knew each other for a moment, he felt something inside towards her. Touching her leg lightly, he swam closer. Mab reached out with her hand. For a split second the fish thought that this was his end, that the queen would kill him with this hand. However, he was wrong. She touched him, sliding her hand gently along his side and giving him unimaginable pleasure. After a while she reached out with her other hand as well, moving the fish closer to her. She hugged the fish gently against her velvety, naked body. The feeling of the warmth and smoothness of her skin against his cold, slightly slimy scaly body was heavenly. Her beauty up close was even more striking, and her touch, though firm, was also gentle and careful, for she did not want to hurt her guest. The fish was stunned. He felt as if he had been enchanted, but was that not the case? This dignified woman, her grace and charm, all this made it difficult for him to form logical thoughts. He was unable to focus on anything else but the firm, soft lips. He couldn't overcome this growing urge. A fiery lust smoldered in his fish guts. Without a moment's thought, he took advantage of what nature had given him and, slipping slightly from the queen's embrace, approached her, joining his fish and her fey lips in a kiss. Surprised by this and at the same time impressed by the carp's courage, Mab drowned in a kiss. Her delicate lips became one with the fish's slick yet graceful lips. Helping him to balance, the queen supported the fish with both hands. She closed her eyes and focused on the magic of the moment, leaving her sister, the empire, and all the problems of her position far behind her head. Only this moment mattered. The fish, being in this blissful moment, did not feel it, but he began to change significantly. Thicker plates of bone appeared on his skin, and his body itself began to grow rapidly. The ornate bathtub in which they both stood expanded with it too, until it came to a stop at the size of a small pool. Mab slowly broke the kiss looking at the new, transformed the fish. Kissing him carefully on the forehead, she wrapped her arms around him, hugging him completely. "You come from cruel lands, you were weak. But now by my side you will be stronger than any of your species could have imagined," Mab whispered to the armored fish. The fish was now feeling the enormity of vital forces bursting his fish breast. The fish felt invincible. He knew that nothing would ever threaten him again, and he would thank the Magnificent by protecting her, even with the last scale of his new armor, to protect her. Queen Mab pushed the carp slightly away from her, and the two lovers began to stare deeply into each other's eyes. Not wanting to ruin this beautiful moment, the fish warrior opened his mouth and said, "I will be grateful to you until the end of my life, and when we both go into oblivion, I will be your guardian and guide. For this I take a vow of loyalty to you until the end of my life, Your Majesty." He concluded the solemn speech with a humble nod of the head, waiting for the blessing of his ruler. She gave him a gentle smile, gently setting him down in the water. "The fish of the unknown lands, I accept your generous gift and express my delight at your willingness to enter the thresholds of my personal army." She reached for a nearby layer of shimmering gold cloth and took out a delicate, ornate dagger made of sea leopard bones. She lifted it above the carp's head and closed her eyes to focus better. From today until my death and one day longer, you will serve as my right hand in the ranks of the military. I name you Son of Earth, for you will be invincible, Mab said, then whispered some powerful spells. The dagger the queen was holding in her hand began to change into all the known colors, the glow reflecting off the precious stones in the bathroom walls. A stream of energy entwined the queen and Son of Earth, bonding them both for the thousands of years to come and be known as the heyday of the empire. Mab came closer, then sat on the back of the fish, cuddled up to her companion affectionately, and plunged the dagger into the side of the fish, embracing it with her naked body. But Son of Earth felt no pain, he felt only the pleasure and joy of being with the queen. After taking out the dagger, he felt an overflow with energy that he had not had before. He rose above the surface of the water, holding the ruler on his back. Mab lay down on the fish and kissed Son of Earth tenderly on the head. The fish, despite having hard bone plates, was able to feel the kiss and blushed slightly. Together we will destroy many enemies, Mab whispered.
And at the end of this document, there is a small note. The subject of the note states,
Research Overseer, Dr. Rizard caught the death of anomalous object 69 to 249, zombie Dunkleosteus, occurred at 2:43 p.m. as a result of the separation of the subject from the body of humanoid 69 to 1. All anomalous abilities of the object with his death ceased to exist. Further examination of the humanoid corpse was recommended. At the time of death, the object's age is estimated to be around 275,000 years old.
for further reading, you will now be redirected to the unclassified Polish subdivision of the SCP files. Session terminated.